Hello, fellow nerds, and today on Nerdy Nicotine, we will be discussing 5 comic book creators that were in the U.S. Army. Now, starting off, we will be talking about ones that I have previously discussed before. One of them being Jack Kirby, one of the co-creators of the likes of Fantastic Four, but he was a surveyor in the U.S. Army during World War II. And if you don't know what a surveyor is, they essentially were scouts that would go out, draw maps of enemy territories, setting up their defense positionings, blah blah blah, and he would come back and let them know how to traverse, give them maps so they could set up strategies and stuff like that to help bolster the Allied forces. So, what I want to ask y'all is there any way you could share this to someone in the military who might be able to find a Jack Kirby map in a database library or something, if that's possible? Because I've tried to Google and find a map before but couldn't. So please, if able, share this video so we can potentially find a Jack Kirby map from his time serving in World War II. But continuing on with someone who didn't serve in World War II, they actually served in the Vietnam War, and that was Larry Hama, the writer for Marvel's G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and the editor for The Nam, which call back to the Vietnam War, which maybe added to why The Nam was more realistic than his other works in the toy line of Hasbro related G.I. Joe. Which, if you didn't know, G.I. Joe was also a pulp magazine from long before. But during his time in the military, Hama was a part of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where he became a firearms and explosion ordnance expert. And another military-esque related fun fact about Larry Hama was that he appeared on a show that was inspired or based around the Korean War that somehow lasted longer than the actual Korean War itself, MASH, because he made an appearance in an episode as, a minor character. Now, continuing on, we're finally going to be talking about one that I find really interesting, and that is Jerry Siegel, the co-creator of Superman. He was also conscripted to serve in the Army in World War II. But during his time there, he was an airplane engine mechanic, a film editor, a motion picture cutter, and writer. He worked in public relations, and he was also a playwright and reporter, which Superman being a reporter, that's awesome. And Superman also worked on a newspaper, which Jerry Siegel also did during his time in the Army for the Army's newspaper Stars and Stripes, where he was a comedy column writer, which isn't really the exact same thing as Superman, but it's still cool. But fun fact about playwrights in the military, around the time in World War II, there were only 9 of them. And our next person we're going to talk about was also a playwright, and that was Stan Lee, the man who made Marvel before it was Marvel, or made Marvel the powerhouse it is today. He was a member of the Signal Corps, which were the communications branches of the Army, and he did stuff like repairing telegraph lines and working on repairing other equipment. And along being a playwright, he was also a sergeant. And during his times with the Signal Corps, he would lead a division. And that division also had some really cool people in comics and illustrations. One of them being Charles Addams from the New Yorker cartoon Addams Family. And then the other one was, let me pull up his real name because you might want to hear it, Theodore Geisel, who is Dr. Seuss. I know Stan Lee was in the military with those two awesome people in comics and, childhood illustrations. And now we're going to go to a different World War, World War One. And that would be because Malcolm Willard Nicholson, the founder of the company that would become DC Comics. Well, he, before being the link of pulp magazines and comic books, he served in the Army when he joined in 1917, when he graduated from a military academy, joining up the U.S. Army's cavalry at the time. Now, there are different reporting saying that he was the youngest major in the Army at the time, the youngest member of the cavalry, and so forth and so on. I'm not going to report all that, but during his time in the Army, he served throughout World War One. After World War One, was sent to study in Paris, and then he wrote an admonishing letter of the Army and published it. Then supposedly there was an assassination attempt on his life when he was visiting a fellow member of the Army, and one of the guards there shot at him and hit him. Didn't kill him, but his family ended up suing the Army, believing that it was an assassination attempt on his life by the Army because of the letter. And then he ended up getting court-martialed, and he ended up losing that one because he published a scathing letter of the Army, which it didn't end his career, but it stalled it, so he couldn't make any more progress. And he ultimately resigned in 1923 and started publishing comics, pulp magazines, then comics. So that's the end of our 5 comic book creators who were a part of the Army. I hope you found out something you didn't know about the comic book industry. Keep nerding out, and I'll catch you next time.